This radio program intended to be for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law constantly changes, and the information may not be complete or correct, depending upon the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts. Different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of these differences, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem. He is Marshall Chriswell. Good morning. How are you?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Happy Thursday.
Yeah, there you go. This is kind of odd, isn't it?
It is. Instead of beginning the week, we're starting to wind it down.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. But we've got a lot of things to talk about this morning. I want to talk a little bit about family law, and in particular, maybe some misconceptions about family law that might exist out there. And one of those I'm sure that you are more than aware of, but quite well versed in, is a misconception or two. Maybe you can tell me about them in marital law, divorce law, those sorts of things.
Sure. Yeah, I think I do a lot of family law work, child support, child custody, divorce cases, and every client that I meet with to consult regarding a family law case, or many clients that I meet with, have preconceived notions coming in. Right? They have maybe friends or family members or someone that went through the process, or they've heard about the process, and they kind of have some ideas about the way things that are going to go. But over time, I've learned there are some common misconceptions that people have. So first one is in just thinking about divorce cases, the financial aspect of the divorce, how we're going to divide up marital assets and debts to resolve the divorce case. There is a common misconception that everything is going to be divided equally. Many people that come in, they say, okay, well, the house is worth this, we have these bank accounts and these vehicles and these investments. Okay, we divide it equally, each spouse gets X number of dollars. It's that simple, right? Mm-hmm. And it really isn't.
Oh, okay. So I'm sure there are many differences. What are the big ones?
Sure. So Pennsylvania is what we call an equitable distribution state. And equitable is a term that means fair. So fair distribution of marital assets and debts. And the court is required to examine a number of factors before determining how things are going to be split up. For example, how long was the marriage? What are the parties' relative ages, health, the amount and sources of their relative incomes? What is their education level? What are their skills? What's their earning potential? Has either party how much has either party contributed to the marriage? And has either party disposed of or dissipated marital assets that perhaps they shouldn't have? So there are, and there are many others. So there are lots of factors that a court, if it gets to a hearing, is going to look at to divide marital assets and marital debt. And it is very, very rarely a case where the parties split things equally upon divorce.
One of the things that we say in our disclaimer we read a couple of moments ago is different laws in different jurisdictions. Individual facts may differ, and I would assume that this is one area where there are some not even subtle differences, but big differences from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. And would that be on a statewide or state-to-state level?
Yeah, so the states are, and they have nuances, but in general, states are either an equitable distribution state, like Pennsylvania is, or they are a community property state. And these are just two different theories of distribution of divorce assets. And some states have adopted and enacted statutes that are different than others. So in a community property state, it's much more likely that you're going to get an equal division, not always, but much more likely you're going to have an equal division of marital assets and debts, whereas an equitable distribution state like Pennsylvania has all of these factors to take into account, and it's a bit more complicated.
Boy, I can see where that would be, and it would take somebody with a really thorough knowledge base in order to sift through all of that information and come up with a fair settlement. So that's one and a very, very major misconception that folks might have. What are some of the others with regards to family law?
A lot of folks believe that the spouse that was, quote, at fault for the divorce, or that caused the divorce, or that potentially mistreated the other spouse or had an extramarital affair, the at-fault spouse is going to pay more in a financial settlement or after a divorce hearing, and it's simply not the case. Under equitable distribution rules, the fault or marital misconduct of one spouse does not generally affect the distribution of assets. So that's, Pennsylvania, like most states, was at one time, prior to the major overhaul of the divorce code in 1980, had only fault divorces. Mm-hmm. So you had to even get a divorce, one spouse you had to allege that a spouse was at fault. But after the overhaul of the divorce code, we now are, like the rest of the country, a no-fault divorce state, and you can get a divorce. You can be divorced without either spouse committing any fault, mm-hmm. And the misconduct of one spouse does not affect their distribution of marital assets and debts.
Yeah, I would guess that there would be some major negotiations that would have to take place as well, where property is co-owned with some other entity, parents on one side, or some other business venture that people might be involved in. All of those things need to be sorted out as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, so if you've got jointly held property, with someone else, or in a lot of cases we have situations where maybe one set of parents gave property, a marital residence, for instance. They say, well, hey, we own 30 acres. Why don't you kids, subdivide a couple acres here and build your house right next to ours? And then folks they get divorced. Divorce is filed for, and there's a big question of, okay, is that now a marital asset that's going to be split up? And this was, prior it was part of one spouse's family's home, family farm. Yeah. So yeah, all those issues are we run up against those a lot.
Do you find there's confusion when it comes to child custody rules and regulations, and how that issue gets resolved when there is a couple that is breaking up?
I do. So I think one and the biggest misconception that no matter how much I try to disavail some people of it, they're not going to believe me, is that the court system, the misconception is that the child custody system favors mothers over fathers.
Oh, okay.
And it is, I hear it all the time, but the custody law in Pennsylvania specifically does not permit a court to preference one party over another based on their gender. It is the overarching goal of the child custody system is what's in the best interest of the child. There are 16 custody factors that every court is required to review before and analyze before making a child custody order. None of those has anything to do with what the gender of either parent is. There still is this misconception that persists that fathers always get the short end of the stick in child custody, and the results that I've seen, over a decade now, just doesn't bear that out.
Yeah, that's a big one. I would guess that there's probably a little bit of a misconception as well, that people think that every divorce case ends up in court with the judge making final determinations. But as we've talked about other issues, there's a lot that happens between attorneys over a conference table, and an agreement is reached long before you get to the step of actually having to go to court.
That's right. I don't know what the percentages are for divorce cases, but I'm sure it's less than 5% end up having a final decision made by a court regarding whether it's child custody or equitable distribution of marital property. Cases are, by and large, resolved between attorneys, negotiating and hammering out agreements. Often we can get that done through in an informal setting, whether it's a meeting between the attorneys or getting our clients together with the attorneys, or just by correspondence. And a large number of them are resolved through the mandatory settlement conferences or child custody mediations that are held through the court process. And so, but these are these are, like I said, mediation settlement conferences where nobody has any obligation to get to resolve it that day. It's just and the mediator or the conference officer is not, they're not going to force anybody to settle. These are voluntary settlements that are reached at these at this juncture in the proceedings. And I always think it's interesting going into a child custody mediation or a divorce settlement conference. So many clients will tell me that we shouldn't even go to this. Is there any way we can get out of it? There's no way we're going to reach an agreement. We're too far apart. We just don't see eye to eye. Mm-hmm. But in going through the process, and I always tell people, 80 to 90% of cases that go through those proceedings settle at that point. It's a fruitful process. And it seems like, and I can understand the parties that are in the throes of it, and it's emotional. It seems like there's no way you're going to get a deal, but we almost always are able to do that without taking another step and going to trial and all the cost and time that entails. And
at no point do you ever put on a striped referee's jersey and throw a penalty flag or blow a whistle.
That's right. Yeah.
Because, and seriously, as a community of attorneys here in Indiana County, or even if it's working with an out-of-county attorney, you folks all know your ways around these laws. You've been working with them for years, and you know what works in negotiations. And therefore, folks can feel pretty comfortable when they're sitting down with their attorney that they're with somebody competent.
That's right, and while we take aggressive positions and advocate for our clients to get the best possible outcome, there is a level of familiarity in a small community where you get a feel for the other attorneys, and it helps in reaching agreements.
Yeah, I would guess. Okay, just a minute left with Marshall Chriswell as we conclude this segment of Martial Law. Folks want to learn more. Maybe someone has reached the unfortunate circumstance where that process is beginning, and they want to talk to you about it. What do they need to do?
You can give me a call at 724-465-5826. Stop and see me in the old R&P Cole building on Church Street. I'm in Indiana. Or go online to www.westernpalawyer.com.
He is Marshall Chriswell. Thanks for spending some time with us today.
All right. Have a great rest of the week. Thanks.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.
You too. Bye now.
Bye.
You too. Bye.